everybody, welcome back. It's episode 202 of Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. We hit that 200, and now we're just on to the next 200, Andy. It's just there's the think that we've actually did 200 episodes is just amazing. So I'm Tom Hunyadi. You may know me from my other show, Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles video cast. And as always, I'm joined by my partner in crime, a backwards traveler. He is Andy Nichols. Andy, my friend, what's going on?
Hey, brother. Happy to be back. And, by the time this airs, the fest will be over, but the fest hasn't happened yet. So the fest will be well done by the time you all watch this, but we're recording this before the fest.
We're just recording it while we still have some energy, because
yeah, we are. And we're doing that. We had a minute, to do this, and we're going to post it, obviously, when it drops. And we had a minute. We just said, let's just try to get an episode covered. And as we talked about in episode 200 when we went live, and thank you so much for everybody who joined us live on our 200th episode that Sunday, a few Sundays ago. That was really special and emotional. For me, but more so for Tom, because he started this thing, and to see where we came from and to see all the people that he interviewed and part of Harry Benson, everybody, Kit, I know it was a really special moment for you, and to have that moment now and move on from it, it's pretty cool. But on that show, we talked about how some shows people like to see is when we do the interview show, and that's what we're going to do again today.
Right. Yes, the interview aspect where we pick an interview throughout Paul's 53-year solo career, but we were finding that those 70s and 80s interviews are generally the best. I mean, those are when he was really more outspoken than anything. He wasn't so guarded, maybe.
Especially those ones in the 80s.
Yeah. So he really let some choice words go. But first, before we get to that, we did pick up a CD that we're really excited about, and this was Elton John's Honky Chateau. It's like the 50th anniversary.
50th.
The
50th anniversary of Honky Chateau, the 2 CD. Tom and I are major Elton fans, and this was an instant grab. But you only got the extra tracks on the 2 CD. Now, the vinyl was on gold vinyl, but there was no second vinyl on that.
Okay.
So you didn't. Yeah, if you got the 50th edition of on vinyl, it was just the regular album. You didn't get all the bonus tracks, the demos, and the live tracks, which are on the 2 CD of Honky Chateau. Elton really coming to his own. Rocket Man, his first real big. I think Rocket Man was his first number one. Even though we like Madman better, I think you and I both. We like Madman Across the Water better.
Madman's a great record. Madman's a great record.
Yeah, I think we like Madman better than this. But this is great. Welcome edition.
But speaking of Madman, I mean, I'm kind of surprised he didn't do a box set for this album. I mean, look, this was a really good album. I mean, we got that big box set for Madman Across the Water, right? And
and we didn't for this, but Madman is a record that has grown in stature over the years because of the success of Tiny Dancer and Leave On.
Yeah.
But mainly Tiny Dancer in pop culture. That song has transcended so much in so many great films, notably Almost Famous. That song has lent its credibility to that album to grow in mystique.
Wait, what's that song called?
Tiny Dancer.
What song are you talking about?
Tiny Dancer.
Oh, wait. It's not Tony Danza? I could have swore it was called Tony Danza.
Oh, well, if you've had a few, it could be called Tony Danza. If you've had a few, it could be called Tony. But that was a great box set that was issued last year, and we didn't get the same treatment for Honky Chateau. We would have bought it. I think you and I got it.
No brainer.
And this is a little taste, because this month, when this airs, Record Store Day is going to drop a 2 LP version of Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only Piano Player, Elton's first album of 1973. And that one, hopefully, is issued on CD as well as vinyl. But I know Tom and Nikki will be lined up and queued up for that release, as I will be too.
Yes. Well, I'm excited that you're excited about our release for Record Store Day, because these last few, I mean, you're really, didn't care for him too much.
Listen, you got an Elton release and a Paul release. I'm there. Let's go.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah. Blues. I know you like that Blues for My Baby and Me. I love
Oh,
Have Mercy on the Criminal.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah. No,
so
I adore Blues for Baby and Me. Great track. But really good. Elderberry Wine is another one that I love. Texan
Hi-
love song.
High
I mean,
Flying Bird.
yeah, yeah. Which sadly you'll never hear Texan love song
No,
played by
you
no,
will not.
you will not.
And then there's the
Um.
Crocodile Rock, which we'll all skip.
Oh, geez, I could, that's like, what's Crocodile Rock? That's like, that's like one of the few Elton John songs. That's like the track where you hope you never hear again, right? One of
Mm-hmm.
those songs, Stairway to Heaven, Dream On, Don't Stop Believing. That's for me. That's
Vain.
in that group of songs. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But listen, I understand that it was a lot of people love that song, and that's great.
Yeah. Did you get a chance to thumb through the 2 CD? I know there's a nice book here and an
I did, yeah, I
essay.
didn't do the booklet yet because I've got the CD in my car, and I'm not going to read the book while I'm driving. But I mean, the album itself sounds fantastic, and I love the sessions, the songs they do for the sessions on the first and second disc, and the 8 live tracks on disc 2 are fantastic as well.
Yeah, and I know if you saw on Elton's social media, he was signing, personalized
I
LPs.
saw that,
Did you
like
see
100
that?
of them or something. Yeah,
Yeah, pretty cool.
it is.
Pretty
Yeah.
cool. But yeah, Honky Chateau recorded in France, which is where Elton did a lot of recording there in the early 70s.
True. Very true. Anyway, so yeah, listen to it, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I've been enjoying it. I was able to get it on
Yeah, you
release
got
day.
it. Yeah, you got it
Yeah,
on. Well, but see, when did it come out officially? On the 24th?
last Friday. Yeah, last
Yeah, now
Friday, which was
somehow
what?
Amazon dropped it to me today. Even though now Amazon, that's
Yeah.
where's my release day release? Now we're recording
Right.
this on the 28th of March,
Yeah.
and
It's
I just
it's
yeah,
weird
weird.
because that'll happen to me on Amazon a few times too. I'll pre-order something. Look, 9 times out of 10 you'll get it on release day, but for some releases these last couple weeks, I've been getting the stuff like a day or 2 days later, which is real
Later.
weird.
I
Yeah,
guess it happens.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So today we're going to
Yes,
tackle an interview from Paul that Paul
yeah,
did in April of 1982 to
yes.
coincide with the release of Tug of War, which you all know came out on the 26th of April, 1982. And this was an interview that was published in the Music Express. And the article was
Canadian
called
Music Express.
the Canadian Music Express, and the article is titled "Paul McCartney Wings It Alone."
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, Paul was pretty present with promoting the album here. And it's a really good interview. Our source for this was BeatlesInterviews.org, which is a great
Right.
resource to find all these interviews, which is where we pulled it from. So, the interviewer just starts off with, the first question is, you seem to be wingless at the moment. Is this a back to the egg situation for you? And Paul says, not really. I felt a bit limited working with the group, and I didn't fancy going in making another group album, so I decided to approach it another way, to take each song and ask myself, who would be the best drummer to work with for that kind of song? I cast them all. It's something I've never done. So instead of getting the group and just working with one bunch for a whole album, which I've done plenty of times, I just fancied trying it this way. So I got Steve Gadd for a couple sessions, Ringo for a couple others, and grabbed others according to their styles. The album is a star-studded cast of thousands, which to me is a little drawback, if anything. Normally, I don't like albums with huge cast on them like supergroups, which, if you know your Wings history, he never
Right.
wanted that. He didn't want the
Right.
supergroup aspect. He just wanted to start out. So this goes very much against the grain of what Paul
Right.
wanted to be, getting these big name acts. But after Wings, he was like, well, what should I do? I'll just get the best sessions players for each song.
Yeah, but we didn't know it was going to be after Wings just yet. I mean, as we know that it was started off as a Wings record. George Martin comes in. However, how do you feel about the part where he says I felt a bit limited? I mean, we know that him and Denny are kind of like having a little war of words at the moment. But I mean, I just feel I don't feel comfortable saying this when we know how talented someone like Juber is. You know what I mean? And if I'm hoping he's not meaning the whole band. and I'm hoping he's just meaning one person.
Denny Laine.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's it's so hard to think. Lawrence recalls this time, his time with Wings, very fondly, and maybe 40 plus years has helped with that. But that's why we dive into these interviews, because the emotions and the feelings are a hell of a lot different then than they are now. So you're kind of seeing where Paul. It's easier to just say, "Oh, I was restricted or whatever." Maybe restricted. You're Paul McCartney. What are you talking about?
Yeah, moving on. Next question is, you are known for criticizing such projects and accusing certain high-profile musicians of being weird. In fact, the musicians in Wings were more or less unknown at first. And he goes, they were never really faces. When I was getting the group together, I didn't want a permanent group of superstars. I still don't think I would want that. Just for one-off things like this, I felt it would be good. So anyway, I tried it and I found I enjoyed it. When the sessions was over and when the music was done, there wasn't a huge ongoing thing. You just say thanks, and if you like it, you can ask them back. I ended up doing that and met Stevie Wonder and sang with him. So
see, and now you know it, because look at what Paul's done with the bands. His band that he's had the last 20 years. And to a lesser extent, the Flowers and Off the Ground Band. Now, those musicians were a little well known, Robbie McIntosh and Hamish Stewart. But, who knew the guys that were in Paul's band now? So he likes getting people that are not high profile. To be, he just wants I didn't want together.
He doesn't want any of the spotlight taken away from him.
No.
I would imagine.
No, but so to get it, but see, he was never going to go on tour with Steve Gadd.
Oh no,
and all these people.
Right. No, agreed.
And that's where you hear albums like Tug of War and Pipes of Peace. Hate on all you want, people, but they are a polished, well played on record. The musicianship is great on them. The tunes may not be the best, but the music, you've got great players on that.
Right. Moving up a question, but does Wings still exist? So, I mean, as we know, we're getting into, Wings questions. Not really. We sort of disbanded for this album. If we're going to pick it up again, we should just be loose enough to come together again or not. You see, I hate the pressure of a group.
Right. So you got to remember, like when Tug of War starts, Wings is still kind of together, but not. Obviously, Wings officially disbands in April of '81, but Tug of War stuff had already started by then. But Denny Laine was still in the picture, as you know, if you look at your Tug of War archive, you know that Denny's in the sessions. He's a part of it. He's on the credits. You can hear Denny in the music. So, yeah, Wings was over, but Denny was still there. But this was where kind of Denny made his exit. And we'll get to that.
It's really over because of the drug bust, right? I mean, look, when Lawrence was on last time, he talks about touring America after Japan, right?
Yes.
He talks about touring with in '81. He's I'm sorry, no, '80.
In '80 with a number one song
coming up, right? Exactly. So it's only over mainly because I think personally because of of Japan.
I like his answer here in the next question. I'm coming up to 40 now. I don't have to stay in a group. There's no rule anywhere that says I have to stay. At the time, Denny Laine was staying with me. We were writing together. Right. He was going to stay on, but we had a bit of a falling out. It was nothing madly serious, but he decided to go his own way, saying that he didn't want to go on tour. He hasn't been on tour since, laughs. However, he wanted to get his own thing together. Well, yeah, he wanted to tour.
Yeah, but again, Juber saying, I mean, they were all still paid for that, for that tour.
Yes, they were. They were paid for the tour, and then Denny, and they all went in. Yeah, so we know the Japanese tour is really with the end of it, but obviously, Juber's doing his own thing, Holly's doing his own thing, and then Paul Linder and Denny are still together, and there's Denny now in Montserrat in '81 with George Martin and Ringo and Steve Gadd and Stevie Wonder and Ringo and doing all this stuff. So, what was like, well, yeah, Denny, come to Montserrat and work with me, and then all of a sudden and do the sessions for Tug of War and Pipes of Peace, and then exit stage right.
Right. Next question. It seems that there was definitely a hatchet floating about, and that it wasn't.
This question was weird. Yeah.
Yeah. The arguments are still there. And then Paul goes, with Denny, question mark. There were little personal things here and there, little things that were just niggly. I don't know what that means, but in the end, it blew up a bit. Yeah, right. It was a bit of a number. We didn't part shouting at each other or arguing. We both decided that it would be best. In fact, it was his own decision. I can never remember these things because once they're gone, they're gone. It was his decision. He rang up saying that he was going out and on his own, get his own stuff together. So yeah, kind of like more of what he was saying with that previous question.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Same kind of thing, but interesting, and then the hatchet jobs. It's just, crazy.
Right. And, I think another question, one thing Denny said was that he was doing hatchet jobs for you on other musicians. But Paul goes, but Denny has got his own theory about what happened all the time. As far as I'm concerned, there were no hatchet jobs ever. So yeah, I mean, obviously that's just more bickering between Paul and Denny, but it is what it is.
Right, and you're not going to hear a lot about that. You're just not.
No. Another question here. You are the only one who went back into a group after the Beatles, John, George, and Ringo did their stuff.
Wait, where are you, partner? I lost you.
Let's see here. I'm reading the question right now. The question after one thing Denny said that was he was doing a hatchet job.
Okay,
so the next
gotcha.
Yep. So, yeah. You are the only one that went back into a group after the Beatles, John, George, and Ringo did their stuff with other musicians. Now you're doing it for the first time. Do you regret not having done this earlier? And he goes, yes. So right there, I mean, right there, he's saying he regrets, doing Wings, I guess. It probably have been a good thing to start it then. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, he's very regretful here. He's regretting the Wings thing, but time heals all wounds, and obviously he doesn't feel that way now, but then he did.
I don't think so. Right. The decision I made was mainly to get the group together to play with, the decision or play because with the Beatles, we weren't really playing a lot. I thought of doing that after I had seen Johnny Cash on TV, and I wanted a similar group with a couple of guitars and drums just to have sung with. And that's what I did. So.
I like the answers that he gave up a couple about the hatchet jobs, talking about when he mentions Denny, he was talking about hatchet jobs with Denny Laine. He goes, Denny Seiwell left on his own accord. I'm sure I could go through the whole lineup. It's a bit boring, really, and a bit of a yawn. With the last Wings lineup, we parted in a friendly way. Everyone was a bit disappointed, and I was a bit sad because that was it, because it was a big burden. But I just, I liked how, he mentioned, the whole question about the hatchet jobs, and he says, well, Denny Laine left on his own accord. I didn't sack him. He left on his own. But as we know, there's a little more to it than that now.
Right. I like, are you dictatorial outside of music? I don't know. I don't examine myself that way. I just am. I just go through it. I just wake up in the morning and go to bed at night. Whatever happens during the day, it just happens. I don't really know don't really know how I am. In fact, I'm always getting rude awakenings. John saying I hurt him. I did this to him and that to him. Was always a rude awakening. I never thought about that kind of stuff. It was just the way I was and kind of family I was from. It was very much different scene from how John was raised, so I must have rubbed him the wrong way many times without even knowing. And he was probably more sensitive. But listen, he did it to me too.
Yes, he did.
I'm not taking the blame for anything. We just busted up because it busted up. I don't think I go around trying to be a dictator. In fact, I'm just the opposite, really. If anyone said, oh, you bloody dictator, I'll say, okay, you do it then. I really don't want all that responsibility anyway. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then next up, you're not a dictator in the public eye, but Paul, the nice guy all the time. Even John called you honest little Paulie. And the walking
glossy PR.
Yeah. How do you feel about them?
Yeah. He goes. I never realized I was reflecting that image. As a kid, I watched the telly to see how they did it. and watched films to see how the world went. You pick up on all these cool things. If they smoked in films, you smoked. You just see what was the cool thing to be. To me, the PR thing, I just automatically thought was what we needed in the Beatles to go on and meet people in the press. So I would do a lot of that because no one else would. It's the truth. John wouldn't do it. George wasn't into it. And Ringo, if he liked you, would do it. But even if I didn't like you, all the press people we'd see, I'd bring in and say, because he was, I'd say, come on. I knew they were nervous. I don't like nervous people around. Who does? And this is the Liverpool kind of thing coming out. And he says that here a little further down. A lot of Liverpool people are very good at that. Maybe it's not always genuine, but my auntie Jenna always called me polished. She'd say, quote, "You're really polished, are you?" But in a way, she kind of liked it. Over the years, particularly with John coming out against me like that, it was no good for me at all. He really slagged me off, a lot of which he really didn't mean. He said in interviews, and I've talked to Yoko a lot since, and she tells me that lots of it was just John. A lot of it was on his own. He wanted to put me down. He said, everyone's on the McCartney bandwagon, you just get jealous.
Yeah. Okay.
It's Paul. That's Paul. Who he's been. It's how he was raised. His family. It was he was raised by a very loving family, and to always put up a good image and do the right thing for. And that's just how he was. And the Lennons were not like that, especially in that fractured family. Not that Paul's was perfect. Obviously, his mom died, but Paul's support and how to carry oneself, and image and PR. It's something that's been ingrained in him since he was a boy, and that's why he's always been that way.
Right. Next up, but he was laughing as well when he was doing it, even when he said the only thing you done was yesterday. He said in interviews that he was shitting himself with laughter doing it.
Right, taking the piss or the Mickey. That was right. John.
Yeah.
He says that was his thing. And again, John was a very much in the moment. Like, this is how I feel right now. I'm pissed at Paul. I'm going to say this. And 2 minutes later or an hour later would say, oh, I don't feel that way anymore. So I think that's why Paul's been able to kind of let it all go, 40, 50 years later, because he knows that he knew John better than anybody.
Yeah. And then here's the thing that he does, that the guy goes, the questioner goes, you go out of your way to clarify things when they go wrong. And yeah, I mean, especially, after, John becomes a saint, everybody's saying that, John did everything. So yeah, you want to kind of clear the air, but his answer was pure fear. Yeah. So
fear.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
The Beatles were meant more to Paul at that stage than anybody else did. So it was, that's why it was fear. He didn't want it to end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then they go. This interview then goes into the whole McCartney press release thing.
Right. And he goes, and then this is kind of a common thing with him. He goes, now. See, that's one thing that really got misunderstood. He always, kind of goes, well, now I see, where people might have, taken that wrong or, misunderstood, with
the press release.
George. Yeah, with that, and and the little bickering with George, goes, now he sees that maybe I was a little controlling, now I can see that maybe that wasn't taken the right way,
But see, that was just him wanting to hold on so it wouldn't let go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it came out. It was like, I'm controlling because I don't want this to end. Whereas John and George are like, let it go, man. And Paul's trying to keep it all together. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, one of the things that he says after this was, it's funny when you were allowed to, it's funny what you were allowed to say in public.
Quote.
It's weird if someone comes up to me and says, Fleet Street has got the story about you doing such and such. I really believe it and all. And I think a lot of other people too. John and Yoko definitely did. They took in all the cuttings all the time and weighed on political situations. So he is talking a lot about John in this.
But then look at the next question. The next question says the interviewer says, quote, John had all the time to do it because as we know, John ended it first. And Paul goes, yeah, good on him too. That's what he wanted to do, but great. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that I always find myself explaining bloody crap. I mean, the Japanese thing, people said to me, well, why'd you take it in? And that much of it's sitting right on top of the suitcase. But you don't think I didn't ask myself that? I do. But I really hate being judged by the media. So really, I like to be a whole lot looser, but I've learned this whole game now, and my reactions are almost instinctive, like a robot. One of the things I never realized about people is that it's not very sympathetic, not being too much of a loser. People like a loser. People like to feel there's something wrong with you. Now, with someone like me, I could cover up what's wrong. I'm just not that kind of character who could admit everything that's wrong, and that's Paul.
Right. Yeah. Next question was, has your image affected your songwriting at all? Your ego? No, I
Hmm.
don't think so. I think the
Yeah.
songwriting is just my songwriting. It just comes out. I think everything about your life affects your songwriting. You are just a vehicle and it all comes through you. So you know if your vehicle is in a certain state, you'll write that kind of song. Some of the time it does actually affect me, but I really don't feel it affects me mightily. But it must. But it must do. Some people still say, "I've never thought you were like that." I tell you, who suffers from this too, and that's Linda. She's totally the opposite to her image. I don't know what people think of her. You meet lots of people. Tell me. And then he says, people tend to say, "Is she
Well, the
really
question
that snobbish?"
that's the
Yeah,
question. People say that
yeah,
is she really that snobbish? That's how she projected. And
right.
Paul says, it's in your character to fake it, then you must fake it. There's no way you can give in. You can change the spots, whatever the expression is. But when you really get to meet somebody who's not reacting to a microphone or an interview, when you see them in their off-duty hours, then you find what they're really about. Yeah. So listen,
um,
he's a master PR person. He always has been, and he always will be.
Right. And then they talk about a little bit about being not being able to do much in public anymore. But moving on a little bit more, Andy, if it says here, what about the book your brother wrote?
Oh,
Thank
right,
you
the
very
Mike
much.
McCartney one. Yeah.
Yeah, he's back to calling himself McCartney. A couple of years ago, you had a tiff with your stepmom because she went back into show business under the McCartney name. I understand you weren't so happy about these things. Now, the brother thing, I mean, before I read what Paul, his answer to that question was, the brother thing, I don't understand why that would even be a thing.
I don't
You know
think
what I
he
mean?
cares. I don't think
Yeah.
that bothers him. I don't think it's ever bothered him one bit.
Well, I mean, then why do you suggest that he change his name? You know what I mean? Back in the
That was
'60s.
all Mike. Mike wanted the name changed.
Okay, okay.
Mike didn't
Um,
want the stigma of the McCartney name. That's why he went by McGear. That wasn't
okay,
Paul's decision.
okay. I want to go back and maybe do some more research on that. But
Look it up.
yeah, it's a pity. All that stuff. The worst thing about it is that it spoils immediate personal relationships. When I met those people, I start thinking, well, I got to watch what I'm saying, what I'm going to say now, because it might be in the next book. So again, George is always thinking that. Paul is thinking about, things I say. People I meet, do they have an agenda? Are they going to write a book? Things like that. Remember, George felt that way when he met that the asshole author who we're not going to name.
Yeah. Oh
Uh,
yeah. Yes.
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I always say that these things are my particular occupational hazard. A doctor goes to a party and the other guy says, "Can you have a look at my leg?" That's the doctor's occupational hazard. Mine's the stuff we've been talking about. This is what comes with my job. He goes, "Do you think you make a life hell for people who are close to you, who work
Hmm.
for you?"
That's a
I
great
like that.
question. Now yeah,
Yeah.
this is a funny one.
Yeah, I don't know. You have to ask them. He says. I hope not. If I do, I wouldn't know what to do about it. I mean, I would assume that they would have to tell me that. It doesn't appear that I'm difficult. As far as I'm concerned, I can say no. I'm terrific. I'm saying that as a joke. You see, just so everyone gets the affection. This is how I get misquoted a lot. And then we're not gonna. You guys can read what he's talking about with Elvis Costello and about the confusion about how they talk in other countries as opposed to how they talk here. And then I was like, they didn't call Murray the K a wanker, and he didn't know what the wanker was,
No.
and so he was just calling himself a wanker. He's a
Yep.
wanker. So,
Oh, because
so
he didn't get the context. Yeah.
you didn't get the context, yeah. So let's go back to Wings now. Are you splitting from Linda musically?
That was a very interesting question. The guy asked, "Are you going to split from Linda musically?" And he goes, and he had to laugh. Laughs. I like that. No, in fact, she did harmonies on this album, Tug of War. The thing was just
Right.
getting musically limiting. So I did say to Linda, "Look, if I wanted to use some other people on harmonies, how do you feel about that?" She said, "Okay." As it happened, we did it ourselves together with Eric Stewart. And Eric Stewart, Paul and Linda really make some nice sounds.
Right. Yes, they do. And you know, and the question kind of makes sense because Linda is part of the group. I mean, even though they are married, it makes sense to ask that question. You know, she's part of the group. Are you going to continue to work with her? Obviously, because you're married. What's easier, dealing with Linda the musician or Linda the
Good question.
housewife?
Good question. The musician or the housewife? And he
Yeah.
goes, Linda as a musician is easy. She's easy because she'll do what you want. She's not that much of a creator. That's a pretty honest answer. On
Yeah.
this album, George R. Martin and I wrote the harmony parts out for her. Linda as a housewife? Question mark. Well, now that's emotional. That's real life. That's not as easy as music. I love it. I wouldn't change a thing, but it's hard work. It's hard graft.
Mm,
Good
yeah.
question.
Right.
But the live, he asked him about live shows.
Yeah, that's a great one. That was just the one I was going to read. So go ahead.
What about live shows? Are you going to, now this is 82 now, are you going to perform live? You said after John was killed, quote, for security reasons, we reckon we shouldn't play live. Good question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was right after the John thing. That was my response at the time. I'm obviously thinking about all that, wondering if I want to, and really, I'd be the same as I've always ever been. If the idea grabs me, I'll do it until I don't want to. I'm definitely not thinking I won't ever do it again. Sometimes I really miss performing. I don't at the moment because I'm doing so much work on that album. I'm performing only in a studio.
Yeah.
Then after this, I'm trying to put a film together. Isn't everyone? But mine's different. Mine's better.
Yeah,
Wow.
baby. Yeah.
Our friend Ed would love that line.
But mine's better.
But mine's better. I'm trying to get a film based on this album, so that will take care of a bit of time. I suppose after that I might perform. I just go and do it. You can't worry about
your security all the time. Right. Yeah.
Next question. Are you not terrified now? No, I was very terrified right after John's death because it's such a horror for such a thing to happen. I was talking to Yoko about this. I had a few conversations with her quite recently, and she told me people don't like me because of certain things I've said. For instance, when John was killed, I was asked for the quote, and I said it's a drag. To me, looking back on it, I was just stunned. There he goes, defending himself, like they talked about earlier in the interview. I was just stunned. I couldn't think of anything else to say. I could have tried for a sentence and put it all into words. I couldn't. It was just like blah, 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 blah. Oh, I said it's a drag. Yeah. So
right, and we've chewed that up a bit, and then they asked him, but what do you want? Everybody asks you what wants to know. How'd you feel when you heard the news about John's motor? And then it says here on the article, at that moment, the guy's cassette stopped. And then Paul goes, right. You see, your cassette didn't even like this question. You see, so obviously the interview was recording it. And even when we asked him about John's murder, it stopped.
Right.
And Paul says, listen, John would be the first guy to laugh about that. How did I feel? I can't remember. I can't express it. I can't believe it. It was crazy. It was anger. It was fear. It was madness. It's almost not a fair question to ask, really. It's just not. He was going to get up and start dancing? It's a horrible.
It's like the hitter that hits the grand slam to win the game. He hit, he walks on, he scores, he gets covered, crosses home plate, and then an interviewer is right in his face. What were you thinking when you hit that home run? It's the moment. I mean, what do you want somebody to say right in that moment? Who knows what's going through your mind at that moment?
At that moment, yeah. So this kind of goes on to questions about how they felt about each other, and we kind of all know that's right. The guy asked him, "Were you still close to him?" And he thinks he was, and it goes on and on and on. And we'll have this link on our channel. You can go on and look at it.
But, he did have time. He did have time. I mean, look, he woke up. He went to the studio. They were talking all day. Sharing memories of John. He did have time, I think, to come up with a better, something better to say than that. I don't know. What do you think?
I give him the pass on that. I don't expect him to come out there, even after working all day in the studio and thinking on it. That's his moment to think about how he feels. I don't expect him to walk out there and have an answer. Did they do that to George and Ringo? No. So you know what? I don't fault him for anything he said that day. You're talking about a history of somebody that you've known since you're 14 years old, and then to go through all that and to go through all that shit. and then even after processing it for a day, you lose yourself in a studio to work on it with a guy you have a long history with the same guy. Oh, have an answer, please? No, fuck off. I'm not talking to you. Get away from me. I don't blame him. I don't blame him. I don't care if he didn't have an answer a month after John's murder. It's his right to say something or not, and I don't blame him one bit.
Fair enough. Next he goes, were you actually still close to him? Yes. I suppose the story was that we were pretty close in the beginning when we were writing stuff together. We felt a lot of sympathy for each other, although on a personal level, based on a lot of stuff that went down later, I obviously wasn't that close to him. To me, he was a fella, and you don't get that close to fellas. I felt very close to him. But from a lot of what we said later, obviously I was missing in the picture. But anyway, I felt close to him then. And when the Beatles started to feel the strain towards the last couple of years, it was getting to be a bit of a strain. And we were drifting more apart. I think the kind of anchor that had held us together was still there. I think that we all, in a way, started to get really angry with each other, annoyed and frustrated, but we were still very keen on each other. Loved each other, I suppose, because we had been mates together for so long. Like Ringo says, we were as three brothers. It's the kind of feeling. I mean, I don't realize that, but Ringo would tell me later, quote, "You are like my brothers, you lot." We all knew that we were the same kind of deep regard for each other. So,
yeah. And then it gets into a little businessy type there. The interviewer asks him about talking to Yoko and buying Northern Songs again, which then opens up a whole bag of worms that happens after this. But, it kind of gets very interesting here, talking about the money and having basically how they were getting screwed, blah, blah, blah. And, they tried to buy Northern Songs, and he goes, I wouldn't mind. Yeah, Yoko wants to get John's stuff. I mean, if it comes around, that's great. The joke is that the price of it was so huge. I just keep thinking, I wrote them for nothing, and I'm buying back for this. He could never get past that. He could never get past having to buy things that he did for nothing. And I get it. And then it kind of gets into this like political thing a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah, but the guy, the question was, but you also tried to buy Northern Songs recently, I believe you said. So
yeah.
Paul never actually says, yes, I did. He goes, I wouldn't mind.
I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind. Yeah. Now, we know for a fact he did try to. Well, no, he tried to counter when Michael offered to buy them, but that was that was in 85.
Yeah, which was a few years later. So at this point in time, he's not actually saying that he tried to buy them. And the guy goes, 25 million is what I heard you offered. And then he goes, I don't know what the price is. You'll have to ask Mr.
Lou Grade. Right.
I mean, Sir Lou.
Sir Lou. And then he get the question, they say McCartney's worth 200 million. Does it embarrass you? And then he goes into this whole big thing about unemployment and driving a Rolls Royce. And the money that I got is because people wanted to buy my records. They don't have to buy my records. I haven't forced anybody to do anything. I'll help other people. I don't keep it all myself, so I don't feel guilty about it. What I'd like to do is get the unemployed earning money, then see me not earning money. And then he goes, I even talked to Margaret Thatcher about this once, which I thought was a really interesting quote. He talked to Maggie, because this was at the early 80s. That was when Maggie was, writing to, starting up there. But interesting quote, as we now know, the nearest I ever came to feeling unemployed was when the Beatles split up. And he said that, as we now know, later, since then, that he felt like useless and unemployed because that was his baby. So, and he says it here in 82. I feel like it was I bet this is the way to feel unemployed. And I hear guys talking and the depressiveness and the drunkenness and everything else, and that's how he felt.
Right. Second to last question might be one of the more important ones. You said in the past that you were always a bit sensitive to criticism. How do you feel about newspaper reports after John's death that said John was the one who did everything in the Beatles? And Paul goes, I am aware of that, yes. One of the minor pities when something becomes as final as John's thing is that people sum you up. I mean, apparently my obituary has already been written. Yeah. Hunter Davies has done it for the Times. They're ready should I die. They got me summed up already. That happened with John. So you see, John was the aggressive one. Paul was just the PR man. Yeah, John was the one who really wrote all the great stuff. John would actually agree because he had an ego like that. He'd like to be the one. He wants to be the first rather than the second. But I think if you had caught up with him on an off moment, even he'd agree that there was some great stuff that I did, which was good. I'd say that John and I were the main creative forces. John, in a way, was very much the leader in the group. Many times he'd goof, and I'd be able to straighten him out. In that instance, I'd be the one. Or often we'd want a certain kind of song, and I'd come up with it. But generally, I think all of us in the group knew John was the most forceful personality and the wittiest. But he wasn't always that. Yeah.
He wasn't. And there's your non-marginalization of John Lennon, Joe Mayo.
Oh, boy. John had massive sense of insecurity. Really, who cares? The Beatles was it. There it was. There's the music. You don't like it. You don't like it. If you like it, there it is. The truth is in all the shades of gray.
Okay? Well, you got to read the last question. Are you happy with the way you're living in your empire?
Yes, I am. Yes, the Empire Strikes Back.
which is a great answer because obviously that was still all the rage then in Era 82. So, yeah, again, Paul, speaking pretty frankly, not to the level of some of the other interviews we've talked about before this, especially after this with the Salavic interview in 86, the Playboy interview in 84. Especially after the lawsuit happens there, where when Yoko and George and Ringo sue Paul again, and things get a little bit frayed. But again, Paul really on the heels of a new album, fresh, his first musical statement since John's death, speaking pretty frankly about it. He's got, he's how do I respond? People are expecting all this stuff, and Paul reacts and responds the only way he can, which is musically, and which is why the album is stunning. And remains one of his best ever still because of that.
Yeah. So in the comment section, let us know what you think about this interview. Was he out of line with any of the answers? Do you think his answers were spot on? And we'll take a look at those and we'll have a conversation about it. But Andy, you got anything coming up you want to talk about on your other channel?
Not much. Stay tuned for episode 2 of that thing that I'm doing with your cousin there. We got to get to the next 2 album, which we were going to do, but David's been traveling for work, and obviously we've been busy with Fest stuff, but we are going to tackle the Who Sell Out at some point this month, April, when you hear this, when this is out. So that'll be out at some point on my channel as well as some Record Store Day goodies, I'm sure. Tom and I will be doing some unwrapping. We've got the Red Rose Speedway Speed Master coming out, so we'll be plenty busy on that. And so other goodies that I might pick up, I'll throw some videos up on my own channel as well.
Oh, very good. Yeah, and then with Talk More Talk, we when this is posted, you guys will probably see the piece we did at the Fest for Beatle fans talking about 1973 and was that the best the solo year, and we would love to hear your thoughts on that. So Andy, I think that's gonna do it for this week.
Yep. Another interview and review, as we like to call it, when we do one of these. Like I said, the link for the interview is in the description box below if you'd like to follow along. We went through most of the interview, about good 85% of it. If you want to read the whole transcript, it's there. I know some people say, well, how do you reference it? So we include the link in our video description, so you can follow along with us and see where we're going with it when we choose to pick out the bits we want to talk about. And if you have another interview that Paul did that you'd like us to tackle and to discuss, send it our way.
Send it our way, please do. And we'll try to get to it in a couple months. Anyways, so be on the lookout this month. We're going to have Luca back to talk about his book, Music is Ideas. And
he's got another book, very similar, stories behind the songs, about another artist that I like very much and very much written.
That's right.
Yeah, are you aware of that?
Yeah, Peter Gabriel, right?
That's right. So Luca's got a book on Peter Gabriel, solo, no Genesis, but it's going to be really awesome.
Yeah, there you go.
So he'll tell us about that too.
Right. So again, please check us out, or please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Paul McCartney, blah, 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 Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. See, we really don't do these this much, do we? We really need to promote the show a lot more and try to get the word out and have you help us get the word out and get people to check us out, especially on YouTube and subscribe. We really want to continue to grow this channel, and our quest for 2,000 by the end of the year is still going. We're almost at 1.5 K subscribers, so we really would appreciate your help. And Andy, I'm hoping at some point by the next episode that I'll have a new setup, with a good mic, a good headset, and new equipment. So I'm hoping that my audio might sound better than what it does already. So hopefully that's the case. So
all those haters out there, they can't stand your audio.
But we got to make everyone happy. It just can't be some. It has to be everyone.
Good one, partner.
Anyways. Yes. So email us at twolegspodcast@gmail.com if you have any ideas for shows, or you just want to talk about a show we did in the past. And find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Two Legs Podcast. So that's going to do it for this week. We will see you next week. And as always, have a great day and a beautiful night. Take care.
See ya.
Listening to Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast, hosted by Tom Hunyadi and Andy Nichols, with musical contributions by Dylan